This is the Fire from Two Windows podcast hosted by Lou and Matt. These opinions we share are the sole opinions and do not reflect our employers in any way. We're here just having fun, trying to learn and better ourselves. How you doing, Matt, tonight?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. A couple more days and I got a vacation coming. But a lot of things, just scrolling through the gram and a lot of stuff, a couple good accounts on there talking about search culture, searches, just the overall opinions on, who performs them, what are we looking for, the controversial VES or VEIS or whatever acronym you want to call it. So I thought it'd be a good topic to discuss tonight. So dive right into search culture. So what is a good search culture in your mind?
I think it's having it in your repertoire. It's not as apparent to me, or at least it wasn't as apparent to me until recently, that there are departments and agencies that do not have searching as part of their primary function when they arrive on a fireground situation. When you're looking at that tactical worksheet that we talked about previously, or it's in your drill nights, or it's your back of the truck bay drills, not seeing search on the board or one of those boxes that tick man, that was eye-opening. I did not realize that wasn't part of the fire service, and I guess I got to chalk that up to being grateful that I've been part of departments who have always had that built in. And I'd say that from what I've recently learned, having that built into your system is what search culture is really all about. If you're not out there actually doing it, you're kind of failing the operations. What about you?
Yeah, I think there are departments out there that have put truck company functions on the back seat, on the back burner. We're the county that we work in. It seemed like for a while the way to fight fires was just to throw engine companies at the fire and just, if it didn't go out with the first hose line or if things weren't going well, we're going to throw another hose line in there and we're going to throw another hose line in there. The next thing you know, there's a basement left. And to me, a good search culture is getting a company, two guys, a company officer and a backseater, or even two companies, and when I say companies, it doesn't have to be, if you don't have a ladder truck in your district, that an apparatus, a company arriving still has to perform search. And if they can get in the building and find that fire and then call for the hose line and maybe contain the fire, it's going to lead to a more efficient extinguishment culture. The good search culture isn't rescuing people. I mean, that's what we want. That's what every truck guy's dream is. Pull a body out. However you want to do it. But the main function of the truck company is a search for that fire. And if they come across a victim in that search, awesome. But you got to be aggressive and get in there without a hose line. And the truck company is going to take a beating to find that fire. They're going to have to make that hallway. If you got a bedroom fire impinging on the hallway, maybe it's coming down the hallway a little bit. You got to make that hallway. You got to get to the door. So to me, a search culture is, quick masking up at the door, getting in there ahead of the hose line, searching for fire, searching for victims at the same time, and performing these searches without a hose line. I understand there's some new NFPA regulations that are coming down that's causing a shitstorm in the fire service right now because they want to overhaul the 2 in and 2 out, which luckily in our department, it's not going to affect us at all because with our responses. But, you go to some of these volunteer departments that, limited manpower, even some of these career departments that are limited manpower. I mean, there's a department south of where you live along the lake where I think they have 5 guys on duty and all 5 guys each drive one piece of apparatus. And that, they're on the fringe of not going to 2 in and 2 out. So, I mean, if they overhaul this 2 in and 2 out, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I think another big part to include in that search culture, and maybe there's two different ones that that can be thrown out there and see what sticks for your department is, are you searching ahead of the line, or are you kind of waiting for that line to get in there and then you're searching a floor? And in most cases, we'd think that idealistically it's going to be the fire floor, the floor above, and then so on and so forth. All the way up, work your way down.
Well, the fire conditions are going to dictate that.
Right.
You open up that front door and you're met with a wall of fire. You're not going in and out of the hose line. The hose line's going to have to knock it. I mean, that you don't have to search for the fire at that point. The fire's there.
Right.
But you
And how
open up
big's that building? Does that
right.
mean that's your only entrance? Oh, hey, I got fire at the front door. Guess I can't search. Well, what about the back door?
And
You know,
that's a tactic that we discuss on our company is, do you have to perform your primary search starting at the front door? Kind of, we got some notes written down, and we're probably going to jump around just the way this conversation goes. But one of the things I always discuss with my guys is, if we're the second dude, our second dude truck company is responsible for the floor above the fire and or the basement to secure utilities. And, really it's the basement if we're going to a 1-story and the fire is on the first floor. If it's a 1-story and the fire is in the basement, we're responsible for the floor above, which would be the only floor. But if we're going to a 2-story, a 2.5, and it's a first floor kitchen fire, second due truck company is responsible for that second floor of the fire. Now, if we're met with heavy heat, heavy smoke conditions at the front door, or if there's multiple hose lines going in that front door and it's clogged up with guys humping hose and doing their job, and that front door isn't the best option for us, like you said, is there a second door to get us into? I tell my guys, hey, it might be easier. Let's throw a ground ladder and start our search from the ground ladder into a bedroom. We don't have to find the stairs because you've essentially laddered the second floor. You've created your own stairwell. So now you're starting the search in that bedroom. Then you search the entire second floor, and then you should be ending up in that bedroom that you threw the ground ladder at. I was talking to one of the guys that works on the rescue in the city, and one of the groups, that's their group SOP that they have when the rescue gets assigned to a search and they're assigned to the floor above. Their SOG on their little group SOG, their company officer tells them that we will conduct searches via ground ladder because they don't want to get clogged up in the front door. They don't want to go find a back door, and they don't want to have to worry about finding the stairs. I remember a fire we went mutual aid for to the district to the north of us. The door to the stairwell, the stairwell had a door, and that door didn't have a doorknob, and it just felt like a wall. Luckily, we, at some point we found it, but that's where the light went on. The light bulb went off in my head. I was like, you know what? We could have got to that second floor a lot quicker if we had just thrown a ground ladder and entered the second floor via the window and started our primary search of the window. I know. What do you guys discuss on your group with ground ladders and searching through with ground ladders?
we kind of just, I know I've said it before on a different one, getting off the rig. We're assuming we're going to be doing a search just because we are a truck company. Now, whether that's first due or second due, for, excuse me, if we're first, then you're going straight for that door. But I am personally going to be bringing a ladder with me and just kind of throw it up there just in case. If you're second due, then you're going to another floor. And then obviously you're flip flopping for the secondary. But as far as ground ladders, it's not something that we have. I guess maybe they have in the past before I came on to that group, but we have not discussed going, hey, we're definitely going to go through that second story window via 24, and that's how we're going to make our way up there to do a search. We just haven't done it yet.
Yeah,
That's a good thing to bring up.
I don't say it. We're always going to do it. I say, hey, look, if we get off the rig and we're assigned second Division II search, and that front door is clogged, and maybe some of these houses, the second door on these houses isn't the most beneficial place to start a search or to find the stairs. To me, in my mind, it's easier if I just throw a ground ladder, take the window, and I can start my search from that second floor.
So let me ask you real quick, not to get too far off that, before we move on, what dictates when you will go to ground ladder for entrance?
If the front door is clogged with firemen and hose lines, or I'm hearing reports from the first in truck company that maybe they haven't located the stairs for whatever reason. There are houses, there's houses that are cut up into SROs, single room occupancies, or whatever, where that stairwell door could be padlocked. That stairwell door might be fortified because they've built an illegal apartment on the second floor. So between the radio reports, the conditions of the front door with clogged firemen or whatever, um, ease of finding the stairs, it's just one of those situations where okay, we're gonna search via ground ladder. It's not like we're not doing a VES. This isn't a VES. This is
No, no,
I'm
no.
entering one room and I'm starting my search from that room.
Okay. All right. So it's just kind of it's personnel type of deal.
Yeah, and there's one, back when we were a 3-man truck company and we were the only truck company, so we were responsible for the entire search. So we would search, if it was wherever it was, we'd search the fire floor, and then we radio, primary search complete on Division 1. We're heading up to Division 2. We had a kind of a in-house standard operating procedure with our chauffeur, where he was to ladder, like, and this has to go from good size up what we've talked about, and he had to know where the stairwell where the stairwell was. He would ladder the building, and then he would go to a bedroom that was the farthest away from the stairwell, and then he would enter through that window. And by the time we got up the stairs and started searching, he might already have one room done, and then we would meet up, and it would just make that Division 2 search more efficient for us.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's kind of wild.
It was
Just guy going in on its own,
Well, I mean, he's not. He's, hey, we got ladders on all 4 sides. I'm coming into Division 2. He would listen for us to hear the report that we're going to Division 2. That was his cue.
Before he actually makes entry.
That was his cue for him to start going up and meeting up with us on Division 2. And we did it on a few fires.
I don't know if I ever caught that before. I mean, that's 3-man truck company. That wasn't that long ago.
Right. What?
For us. Anyways.
Yeah. So, notwithstanding our department, who should perform the search? It's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question. Boy, I can't tell if you're trying to goat me into an answer or not. I would say it's the truck company, because it is a primary function of a truck company. It's a skill set that the truck company should be really, really invested in. That's not to say that an engine company cannot. It's just that if you have that resource, that truck coming, and they're one of the first pieces of apparatus, we'll say, just assign them or let them self-assign. Maybe they're just primed that way. We go back to that recognition prime decision making. Hey, I'm first to truck company. I'm assuming, unless told otherwise, I'm going to be searching.
Yeah. If you have a dedicated truck company, the truck company, around here we ride on Quince. It is what it is. But the guys that ride on a ladder truck or, a Quint, whatever the flavor you have for an apparatus, it is your quote unquote truck company. I look at it as almost like when you build a house. You don't have your plumbers doing the framing because that's not their trade. You don't have the electricians do the plumbing because that's not their trade. Could they, at some point, probably swing a hammer and put a nail in and put up a wall? Could a plumber do that? Probably. Are they going to do it as well as the framer? Probably not. So the truck companies, can they pull a hose line? Yeah, it's part of their job. They have to train on pulling hose line, but they're not going to do it as efficiently as the engine companies that are out there in the parking lots or in their training facilities, pulling hose lines, stretching hose lines, and getting the language down for how they flake out the hose line, how they, back up each other. Where the truck companies, they're concentrating on truck company functions, searching, venting, utilities, so on and so forth, ladders and everything else. The truck companies have more ladders than the engine companies. The engine companies have, usually a standard engine company's got a 24-foot extension ladder and a 14-foot roof ladder. If you have an aggressive engine chauffeur, he might get a ladder up for you, but that's not really his job. The engine chauffeur is to make water and get water to the nozzle. So, but there are departments that don't have dedicated They might not even have a ladder truck. So in my mind, the first in unit should always be attack. And when I say it could be any fire truck that goes in there, should be, a quick attack. Most fire engines, 500 gallons, you can put a lot of fire out with that. They should be stretching hose lines and trying to, get in there and fight the fire. The second apparatus in should be assigned search. Now, in that case, that second due apparatus, now they're going to be searching behind the hose line. Is that the best way to do it? That's, that's not for me to judge. In my mind, I'd rather have the truck company go in there and search. Now, I could back up and say, if you have an experienced engine boss, while that line's getting flaked out, that engine boss can be getting masked up, geared up. And this is, I'm talking when you don't have a dedicated truck company. That engine boss, you got a volunteer response. You get 5 guys flying up to the firehouse. They get on the rig, fly out the door, report of a structure fire. They get there, met with heavy smoke from, wherever. Guys are stretching a hose line. Engine boss gets off, gives his size up. He's at the front door. He, force the door, doors open, whatever. He can mask up real quick. He can open up that door. And if you have an experienced engine boss, that's been to a few fires, he can at least get in there a little bit, use his thermal imager, get a layout, find the fire. This is searching. He's going to find the fire for the guy in the nozzle, back out to the door and say, hey, we're going to go in, go straight. The fire's down the hallway to the right. Or, we're going to, again, stairs are straight ahead. We're going to go up the stairs. The fire's on the B side. The engine company can give a pseudo search for the fire ahead of the hose line. That's a good engine boss to me if the truck company's not there to do the search. Now that second due engine that arrives, they can drop their manpower off and command should be, all right, engine 2, I'm assigning you to search. I need you to search the fire floor and get division 2. And then that engine chauffeur, the second due engine chauffeur should be, making primary water for the engine, for the first engine.
Yeah. And that's it. So kind of got a split on a couple things here. So it's not every first due apparatus is always going to be suppression. What you're saying there is actually more along the lines of it's a timing thing. So if
Correct.
it's that first due apparatus and we have a long period of time before a second due piece of apparatus is coming, then yes, we do that. Now, if that happens to be a truck and they are 20 seconds in front of an engine, then what do you do?
Oh, then the truck company's going in a search.
Right, slightly different. So it's not.
Yeah.
We just don't want people to misunderstand us when they hear us go, "Hey, the first piece is always going to be pulling a line."
Well,
nah. It depends on timing behind them. How far is that next piece?
Right. If you ride on a traditional truck with no hose, what hose are you going to pull? You can't do suppression. You have 2.5 gallons in that water can. That's it. Now, if you ride a Quint, the Quint's got some hose on it. It's got some water on it. But the hose lines do not pull as efficiently off of an engine company, and they don't have the options that the engine companies have for a multiple line fire. You get a room and contents fire, sure, a Quint can pull a hose line off that, probably work their way through and put the fire out. But you have a good fire where you need multiple hose lines pulled off this rig. A Quint just doesn't have the options that an engine company has. They're not built that way. Especially where our engines are here, they have more options. They got, they have lines coming off the tailboard. They got a 300 footer. They got the 2 cross lays. They have appliances to make up more lines if needed. And it's more streamlined to be able to pump with an engine than it is to be pump with a Quint. On top of that, as soon as you put that truck in the pump and it takes all those RPMs away to run the pump, you can still operate the aerial, but it's not going to operate as efficiently as it is without the pump running because you've robbed
it gives everything towards the pump.
You've robbed the RPM
first.
Exactly. So it's what are we trying to do here? Is putting the fire out more important? Yes. But if the engine is, like you said, 20 seconds behind your truck company, even if it's a Quint, why not give the apparatus that's meant to pump water and pull hose lines off the opportunity to pump water and pull hose lines off?
Right.
It,
And the other part of that, with what you just previously said, was also the grouping. It's not that we take the first five guys that show up for the day. Hey, we're just going to assign you to the truck, or we're going to assign you to search all day long. And then the next five guys that show up, you guys are only going to be on an engine. That's not what we're getting at there either. It's some way we divvy these people out, whether it's a trial based thing, see where you fit well and see what fits well for the the fire department, the district, whatever you have. And then we place these people in there. You still got to, and if it happens to be placed on a truck company, we're going to put you in those situations where you can hone your craft. So when we call on you, the one thing that you've dedicated majority of your time to, you're going to be able to plug and play. Right. Same thing with an engine. That doesn't mean that, like, just to reiterate, doesn't mean engine people cannot do searching and truck companies cannot do, suppression in any way. That's not it. It just happens to be, hey, we give these guys that maybe they've developed talent and we want to develop it further. We give them the tools, we give them the apparatus, and then we put them into play. And we hope that they are going to be in position now relative to that incident that they can do that job.
yeah, absolutely. And I was very outspoken about who should be assigned to truck companies. I mean, you can't. Can you put a probationary fireman on a truck company? 100% you can. They're in the can position behind the officer, and the officer can watch them. But that chauffeur, and we have an outside vent position that sits behind the chauffeur. Those guys have to have some sort of experience underneath, in that helmet, because they're going to be operating alone without supervision. Because our outside vent and our chauffeur are doing all the outside tasks. They might be up on a roof ventilating without a company officer. You cannot stick a probationary fireman up on a roof without an officer. Whereas, the engine company is a good starting ground for younger firemen to, get a couple fires under the belt, be on the nozzle, be on the backup. And I'm not taking any away from the backup. I think one of the backup position on a hand line is one of the toughest positions on the fireground. Humping hose and not really getting anything out of it.
I think it's the most important on
It's
a
probably
hose line.
it's
Makes
probably
or breaks that hose line.
yeah, exactly. But it's if you're in that backup position, you're like, great, I'm going to be humping hose, busting my ass, and for what? To make the operation smoother for everybody else. But you're sitting in a doorway, you're sitting 20 feet away from the fire. You're not in a fun position, but it's like you said, it's one of the most important positions. But that if you ride a 4-man truck company or even 5-man, other cities, you're lucky enough to have more manpower in that truck company, that the guys that are on that truck company should have some knowledge of what's going on, fire behavior knowledge. They should have some fires under their belt to understand, all right, maybe I shouldn't be up on this roof. Maybe I shouldn't take this window, or, this is where the ladders need to go. It's one thing I discussed with our other truck, we were talking ground ladders the other day with the probies, with our probie book. And we're talking about, all right, where do you put ground ladders? And the probie's like, oh, we ladder every window. It's like, well, you don't need to. If you have a corner of a house.
Yeah. What if there's 5 windows for 1 bedroom?
Right. And if you ladder the AB corner on the A side, the next window on the AB corner that's 5 feet from the corner is probably the same room, and you just wasted a ladder on that window. There's only so many ladders our rigs carry, so we have to be smart with where we deploy our ladders. We have to be smart with how we deploy our ladders. So get into why are we who's on that truck company. It's got to you got to have some experience in those positions. Performing the search, we can agree upon, it's time dependent, when the apparatus arrive, what your staffing is, and the order of apparatus and how they're getting there, right? I mean, we go mutual aid all the time to the volley departments out west, and there's times we gotta John Wayne it.
Yeah. And I've gone to those ones and we've ended up pulling lines, at least to get them started and help
Right.
them out. And maybe we swap somewhere in between there.
And
Depends on
it,
whatever that chief or whoever's in command over there wants what they want to do.
and it just popped into my head. You guys had a garage fire a couple years ago, and I had a discussion with you about it was an attached garage fire, and our pump on our Quint has a preset on it. You hit the preset, and it goes up to 150 pounds. Or I think the old one went up to 150 pounds. Our preset goes up to 90 now. Still,
Right. Yeah.
pump operator can,
It got reset
yeah,
when we got all that new stuff.
but our pump operator can, we have the nice electronic dial. It's not a button, but he can very quickly get that up to the proper pump pressure. And I had the discussion with you about, and this is, we were still a 3-man truck company at the time. I said, why was everybody on the hose line for a garage fire where search is being conducted inside the house? I said, the way that was my fire, and I'm not judging the way you guys happened because you guys did an excellent job in that fire. But our chauffeur should be capable of handling a hose line on the exterior of a garage by himself. And this is what I'm saying when we were 3-man, and this fire was right around the corner from our firehouse. I said, did you guys ever think about having the chauffeur man the hand line, protect the exposure of the house, and then you and the officer go in and isolate to make sure the man door from the garage to the house was isolated and closed, and then check for extension up in the void space above that in the ceiling. And I think we had a pretty good discussion about it. And then after that fire, I kind of told my guys, if we get, because we were going on like a string of garage fires at that time, attached
Yeah.
garage fires. And I said, look, if we get a attached garage fire, this is how we're going to operate. If we have to John Wayne it, I want we'll stretch the hose line, but I want the chauffeur. We got 470 gallons of water. Chauffeur is going to man that hose line while we can get in and make sure that door has been shut. The man door between the garage and the house has been shut to isolate that fire, to at least keep it in the garage and limit the exposures of the house. Did your
The boss just said we're pulling a line,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's as far as I think I'm comfortable really saying, because my mind was not on pulling a line. At least that wasn't my prime decision. And
it
I kind of did a little bit of a pause when they said pull a line, and okay, yep, no problem, you got it. And
yeah.
that's what we did. All the communications thereafter was not through me or did not include me, so I didn't hear what else happened in the decision making process.
What's funny is that house has had 2 fires in it in the past like
Yeah, the
6 years.
previous occupant burned that thing up too.
Yeah, and the house is still standing. They've just gutted it and remodeled it. So they've had 2 fires and they've gutted and
Yeah, it looks
remodeled
mint
it.
already.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not like you did anything wrong. It's just something I thought was like I would do it differently, which isn't. I'm not the correct. It's not the correct way that I would do it. It's just I think I have a little bit more aggressiveness to the searching than I think some other bosses do. Which, extinguishment is key. Putting water on the fire will always be king. That's going to trump everything else. But at the same token, if we're trying to save that house and try to save property and life, getting in there quick and making sure that door's shut is going to give, one, the occupants the best chance of survival, and two, give that house the best chance of survival, and not making sure it's not going to be a basement, just a foundation.
Yeah, I was a little surprised on that whole thing. It wasn't long, maybe the summer before that, because that was like roughly the winter time frame. I think it was the summer right before that. Another group had a very similar fire, and it was at the time your other truck company boss
Yeah,
was fireman I believe at the time, and he was working on that group. So he was on a swap, or he was on overtime, and it was the same exact thing. Garage fire, pulled up garage fire. The now a BCE, I believe it was captain at the time, said front door. Our department was going through the whole transitional attack bit for a little, right around
Yeah.
that time frame. So when that was becoming popularized, and then they wanted to put that through as standard operating guidelines and everything, it was fresh in our heads to do transitional attack. And they went, no way, front door, man door, push it through the garage, we're done. And it cleaned up like that. It was fast.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's the
when we
one where they
stepped
had the
off on
grab,
this
right?
one, it was the same thing, only instead of the garage being on the right, it was on the left hand side. It was the exact same scenario.
Is
So
that
my
the one?
mind went, oh, we're going to go through the front door. And I thought we were going to go to search because the engine wasn't that far away. I guess apparently it was further away than I had anticipated. So they said pull a line, and
Are
we
you
went
talking
straight
about the
to the
one where they
garage.
had the grab right before Christmas?
No, it was definitely summertime, and I can't remember the address now. It just stuck out
Oh, because that same boss, he was a boss, but they were on different apparatus because of physicals that day.
oh,
They were on an engine and pulled up, and they were like, he went back and he was trying to put the fire out, another garage fire. He was trying to put the fire out, left the man door open. He passed out in the bathroom, and the first due engine was told. Now, it was a first due engine with guys that are assigned to the truck company on it that day,
okay.
because it all had to do with physicals and how they were swapping manpower out. So they ended up going in the front door, and one of the kid, good fireman, he was pretty young. Yeah, I think he may have had a year and a half, 2 years on the job. Went in and pulled that guy out of the bathroom, and I think he did succumb to his injuries, but it gave the family a chance to say their goodbyes. They pulled him out, and he was still alive. But they went in, made the grab while the other guys on that engine company went in and made sure that door was shut. And then essentially they attacked it from two fronts. They flanked it from the outside, and then they pulled a hose line on the inside and put the fire out.
That whole going through the front door or going through a door, rolling around and coming into the garage from the inside out, just kind of that stuck with me over and over again. Now there's many conditions that could change that: wind direction, if the garage door is open or closed, if it's breaking through the ceiling, whatever, or if it's already broken through that wall into the house. I mean, that's the big thing. So, like you said, maintaining that door to the point that at the volunteer place I work with, we had that exact same thing. We trained on it quite a few times. As soon as we had a call that was on the north side of our town, as soon as we got there, these guys stepped off. Uh, Half of them went for laddering the building. The other half went to the front door to search. They rolled in with a can right to that door, grabbed that door, called it in, saying, "Yep, it didn't make it an extension." And then they opened it up and trying to hit a little bit with it with a can, and they got it. It really wasn't that bad, but it looked bad on the outside just because of the amount of smoke that built up. And they got a good stop on that, just because we ran through that over and over again.
And this is a good search culture is, and we're going to go right into what are we searching for. We're searching for fire and searching for life. And you get a attached garage fire, and that front door gets forced, and you have high smoke conditions pushing out that front door. That means that man door is open. You got to get in there and shut that man door, or you're going to have a house fire at this point. It's not going to be a garage fire anymore. It's going to be a house fire. Now, differently, if you force that door and it's visibility front to back, floor to ceiling, all right, maybe take the line to the garage, flank it, knock the exposures down. But if you force it, if you see fire coming out of that front door or fire coming out of the windows, the man door is open, and
Right.
fire is already being impinged into the living quarters of that structure. It's got to get that door's got to get shut. That leads us right in. What are we searching for? And I said it. We're searching for fire, and we're searching for life.
That's what we tell everybody. That's what we preach in our truck company classes. Even some earlier, your what we call the firefighter training series, firefighter 1, firefighter 2 bit, depending on where you're from. You're searching for life. You're searching for fire. If you have the option, so manpower, timing, limited. Like by time we mean the first 2, 3, 4 units are right on top of each other, or at least arriving right on top of each other. Try and get in there, search ahead of that line. And it's for two reasons. One, we are looking for victims along the way, but we're also mapping out, and this is the biggest thing, we're mapping out the pathway for that hand line. The guys on the hand line, whether it's even if it's a smaller hand line, inch and 3/4, or some places still run like more of a little bit smaller. That's a lot of setup. These guys are stretching it. They're making sure that they're calling for water. They're making sure that they got the other half of the crew, or at least the chauffeur, is making sure they have secured water, or not, and radioing, hey, I don't have water. Whatever they need, their necessities. Now we expect them to what? Also, hey, go figure out where the fire is in the building.
Right.
Let's do the brute force. We talk about softening the building. As a truck company, we say we're going to soften the building, and that meaning the windows and doors from the exterior. Essentially, we're softening it from the inside as well. We're making it easier for them to get in there, do their job efficiently, save the most amount of property, right? Even if we have not found victims yet, we are in the process of finding those victims. But the faster we can get water on that fire, the better chances of all the conditions getting better.
Yeah, 100%. And if that truck company can get in there and, like you said, find the fire, radio it in, hey, it's on the first floor, BC corner. All right, that's where I'm going. That's where
guess I'm not going, to the other side.
Yeah, you're not doing the whole right hand search pattern of the house to try to find where this fire is. It's even on a commercial. We had it was a squib fire, but it was a good smoke condition. The truck company got in there, and it's a commercial structure. It was a food processing plant. I forgot how the fire started. It's something smoldering. It started the fire, started a bunch of product on fire. The truck company entered through the office. The office is clear, zero smoke, fire alarm activated with a water flow alarm. They get into the processing area, and they radio in light smoke condition. The battalion chief called for the structure assignment. I was on the engine that day working overtime, and I just said, hey, let's just hang out here. This is a big building. Let's make sure our stretch is correct. The truck company popped open a door on the Delta side.
Which is closer, right?
Yeah.
To where your location was.
Right. So he popped open a door on the Delta side, said, hey, we got the smokes we have light smoke here, but it's getting heavier on the Charlie side. So I said, all right. I told my engine chauffeur, I said, don't do anything yet. I'm going in. I'll go in with the two guys on the truck company. I'll radio you where I want the engine to be. As we progressed to the back of this, the production area, the smoke got thicker and thicker and thicker to where it was cold because it was a cold production area, but it was lights out smoke at this point. Couldn't see anything. Truck company radioed me, said, hey, we got a roll up door. I told my engine company, I said, hey, look for the roll up door. We're getting it open right now. They rolled around, backed in, stretched. Instead of having a 400-foot stretch to where this fire was, it ended up being maybe 50.
Damn.
Yeah. And that was discipline. It was discipline on all accounts, from the truck boss getting off, getting in there, radioing. He's got smoke condition in the production area, and then discipline on our engine company, not just getting off and stretching line arbitrarily to the first door they opened up. Hey, let's take a moment. Let's make sure our stretch is correct. Let's make sure we can find this fire, and then we'll get your stretch as efficient as possible. So, that was an awesome job by the truck company locating that fire and then radioing to me, hey, we got a roll up door over here. So once I met up with them, boom, roll up door over here, bring the engine, stretch in, fire went out. And then it turned into a ventilation drill.
Yeah. Just had one not too long ago, street over from the firehouse.
Yeah.
At that big processing plant, machine shop.
But, searching for fire is the main objective of the truck company. Searching for life is, if we were going to rank them, fire's like 1A, life is like 1B. Now that can flip flop if, you got mom out there saying my baby's inside, or, my dad's inside, or so on and so forth. Then it flip flops and life becomes 1A and then fire's 1B. We still got to put the fire out, but now we know we have either a suspected or a known situation where we got to make a rescue.
Right.
So
with that, if you want to jump on to the next thing here is what if that life is known and it's that second floor, third floor window?
Well,
Now we've got a VEIS situation. Search is in the name,
yep. So are
but
we?
is that a primary, secondary? Are those our searches that we normally do?
It's a search, but it's not a primary search. Now, if they say we have someone is trapped on the second floor, why are they trapped? This has are they trapped because they're just immobile? Are they trapped because they're a baby? Um, are they trapped because fire's impinging on the stairs? All this needs to be playing in your mind of, all right, do I do a VES or do I go through the front door and try to make the stairs? Taking a victim down a ladder is not the easiest thing to do, especially if you don't train on it. One of the things I think you guys train on it. I know we train on it. My guys hate, when I get that grin on my face, I say, hey, we're doing victim lifts today. And it's the biggest thing is getting that victim, a 250-pound dummy from a prone position up into a windowsill. And if you want a good workout to strengthen your muscles for that, start doing power cleans. But getting someone up over a windowsill and down a ladder is not easy. Dragging someone down a hallway is not easy, but at least you can get two guys dragging. You have help. That lift is usually a one-person fireman, and then the person on the fireman on the ladder. You might have one on the ladder. You might have a second ladder up for assistance. But you asked, is VES? I still call it VES.
I do too.
Is VEIS a primary search? And it's not. If you get on the radio and saying truck one's, size up, first on scene, hey, we got mom out here saying, we have her son's trapped on the second floor, Bravo Charlie corner, and the truck company's rolling up, and they say, all right, we're doing a VES on that window. The whoever's in charge, whatever command structure you have, that person that's standing in the front yard as the incident commander has it in their mind that I have a truck company, at least two guys going up a ladder. They're going to break a window. They're going to get in that room, maybe sweep the hallway if the conditions call for it. They can sweep the hallway. And then they're going to search just one room. And then they got to exit out that window. That should take all of 20 seconds, 30 seconds, depending on the size of the room.
Yeah, unless you got some McMansion.
Right. And I'm in our district, our average house size is 1,500 square feet average. We have some bigger houses, but we also have some, 1,000 square foot, 900 square foot bungalows here. But, the incident commander should have a stopwatch in their head, and they don't see a truck company coming out of that window. They're doing something else. They've gone past that door. Now, what do we do when we vent that window and that door's left open?
Right,
and the line's not and the line's not in place. We just created a natural chimney and if that line's not in place, putting fire out, we just created a natural chimney that's going to pull that fire and extend that fire into the second floor. If we are disciplined and do the tactic that we're supposed to do, vent, enter, isolate, and search, and then exit. Maybe they should put an E on the end of it. VEISE,
Vice.
Yeah. I could go on about acronyms. Don't get me started about acronyms. But if that truck company or whoever does that vent, enter, search isn't out of that structure, isn't out of that room and coming out of that window in 20, 30 seconds or less, that incident commander should be, all right, something's going on. What, first thing is, hey, truck one, how are you making on that VES? Hopefully they radio back, got hung up here. We're making our way out right now. Or they don't answer you. Then you got a Mayday situation. Or they say, hey, we've continued on to the second room. Now you have an undisciplined truck company and they're not doing the tasks that they either assigned themselves to do, which, it happens. Hey, we're going to do a VES. And the IC says, yeah, okay, 10-4. Or they've been assigned VAS, and they're not doing the tactic that were assigned, and that's when you got to pull them aside at the end of the fire, hopefully, and say, hey, VAS is not a primary search. If you're going to do a primary search via ground ladders, just say, hey, we're going Division 2. We're entering via ground ladders. Okay. Now the incident commander knows that a Division 2 search is getting done, or the search on the second floor is getting done via ground ladders. He should see firemen
Yeah.
coming in, coming out on a VES.
It's kind of a commutative property thing. Vent, enter, isolate, search. In the new people that are coming on the line, they're getting hammered with that. You rarely hear VES, and most of us catch ourselves. We write it down so that we can make sure that our vocabulary is correct and everything. But if you hammer in that as soon as they dive in that window, and maybe you're a yeller, maybe it's a kind of boot ass type of instructor, but you get them to that door, close that door, you force them to close that door. That's the isolation, right? And in those moments when we're teaching it in a classroom setting or a recruit academy type of thing, it's because we are in those couple of days of searching, and one of those searching is VEIS. And maybe you're right. Maybe we should take that out of that and place it somewhere else, because it's more like just a rescue itself. It's not necessarily the search, but that I is isolation. And we teach and preach that you're isolating the fire from you inside that room. So now it buys you a little bit of time to complete the search of that room. But really what you're doing, or also, is that you're isolating that room from the rest of the building. Have you ever worked in any other industry, especially like either a machine shop or anything like that, and had to take an OSHA course, like your 16-hour, 8-hour? Other than this job,
the grocery store that I worked at did not. The couple places I bartended, no OSHA training.
no OSHA. They were not an OSHA place.
Yeah, the couple mom pop gutter cleaning window businesses owned by other firemen. I could tell you there's no OSHA on those ones. But yeah, I mean, this is really the only OSHA training that I've had. But
the reason I ask is that I remember it standing out. I worked at two different places. I worked at a brewery and I worked at a steel place for a long time. And both places you had to take that stupid OSHA. It was like either 8 or 16-hour course. And all their safe practices were the most ridiculous things. I don't mean like most ridiculous. That's not the way I should phrase it. It was just they have to treat everybody like idiots.
Oh yeah.
So the first step is wear your PPE. And if you can't remember to wear your PPE, we're going to do something else. And if that doesn't work, we're going to go on to the next step. We're going to keep doing all these things to try and mitigate the risks so that it increases your safety. And it pretty much came down to, hey, remember not to cut your finger off, right? Yeah. Oh, okay, no problem. But then somebody who cut their finger off. You'd always have that one person. You're like, okay, well, shit, we can't have that. Now we're going to issue everybody gloves that cannot be cut through. So that way nobody can cut their finger off. Well, then we got that one guy who forgets his gloves in his locker and he cuts his fingers off, right? It's like, Jesus, right? Okay, so then what's the next option? You can't get rid of, maybe it's a saw, right? That's part of the process. Can't do that same process with a saw. Okay, so then we're going to put these, what they called mechanical or engineered guards in place, where is if the human cannot figure this stuff out, we're going to put something in place so that the human cannot fail it. Okay, so there was safety guards or something over the blade. You try to do that with a glove. Anyways, where I'm going with that is the I for isolation. I think that's part of the reason why they put it in there. It's right there and apparent, so that you got to get in there, flow path, and also yes, there's a flow path because you banged out the window, but you are literally creating a mechanical guard that you're physically shutting a door, blocking yourself off, and once you shut that door, you don't go back through that. That's why we say, hey, before you shut that door, just stick your hand out there, lean out as far as you can, give a quick sweep, because sometimes somebody might be laying right on the other side of the door, and then you shut that door. Once that door shuts, you don't open that door, right? That's your mechanical guard. Don't go through there. That's why. So the community property is, if you shut that door, you're not going back through. Therefore, this is not a primary search.
Correct. And the website Vent on Our Search used to be pretty active when it used to be a pretty popular website before all the social media was on when I first got on. They post stuff every once in a while. They got it. They got Instagram that they post stuff on. But I remember back, this is years ago, that they posted a picture of an interior bedroom door, with a honeycomb
Hmm.
cardboard inside to give it a little rigidity. Those aren't fire rated doors, but and you can see pictures of rooms with doors open and doors shut on rooms that were flashed over. That door held integrity. Now, I'm not saying it didn't burn through, but the other piece of 1/16 inch Luan,
Yeah,
whatever piece of crap wood that they use, that door held up for 45 minutes under fire conditions. Now,
not rated.
it's not a fire rated door, but it's good. It's going to stop fire. It's going to stop smoke. It's going to stop heat. Now, going back to the academy and VES, VIS, ABC, whatever you want to call it, I always pose a question, and we would set this scenario up. You vent the window, you clear the window out all the way. The next step is sweeping the floor. We don't want to, skewer our victim with our tools, so we sweep the floor. Then we sound the floor. We do that sweep, and we find a victim. And it's, what do you do with that victim? Do you go for the door, or do you go for the rescue? Well,
I'm
and
going straight for the door.
and that's
Right,
I
I'm
would
going for that door. Skip the victim, go straight for the door. It's a small room. That's why you've chose to do a VAS. Right,
correct.
go for that door. Buy yourself some time because, as you just stated before, maybe I haven't been doing all my power cleans this month. I haven't been doing all my power cleans this month, right? So I'm gonna struggle getting that person out. I want to buy time because
So
the hole I'm trying to get that victim out is where every other shit coming up the stairwell is trying to get out.
and the majority of the time, that is 100% the correct answer. The majority of the time.
But
What if it's a baby?
exactly,
You can't tell me even the smallest fireman on the job can't just reach in, pull that baby out, and hand it off to the guy that's spotting that ladder or
correct.
the company officer that's right behind you, and then you dive in and make the door.
Correct.
Or even a small kid. You know.
Now
Now,
these are those discipline standards, though. So you preface that, hey, in the academy,
yeah,
I'm not going to give them all the what ifs or the exceptions to the rules, because if that's the first thing they remember, there's a chance that they remember the exception and not the original intent, right?
right.
That's where discipline comes in over
Yeah,
time.
they should be rating. Hey, I got a victim at the sill. I'm going for the door. Boom. So that's going to give the guy down below. He's going to get up that ladder as fast as he can to either affect the rescue, or by the time the door's closed, that fireman that went in has already got the door closed and now is bringing that victim either up and out of the window, or he's got the victim out of the window.
Yeah, it needs some orientation or something,
Right.
possibly.
So here's another question for you. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to this. It's something I ask my guys, and I try to give them my opinion on why I do it, but I don't really change. This isn't like when we talked about force entry with those hacks that we talked about in the prop, because there's really no way to do a hack with entering a window. You can either do it one of two ways. Do you dive head first, or do you straddle the window and go in almost like a reverse bailout?
After sounding the floor, or at
After
least
sound-
checking to make sure that there's something, there is a floor. I
Right.
usually just go straight in head first.
Head first?
Because only because it is something that I do. What I preach is, hey, we're not cat burglars. We're not sneaking in the window, one foot up over the ledge and in the other, putting our head up in the thick of it. It is, we just open to shoot. Do I want to be putting my head up there? Maybe I do have that option. I'm just not going to train that way. If I train consistently, I'm hoping for that. Consistency is really it. I dive.
So there's nothing wrong with the diving. It's quicker and it's easier. One thing,
I shouldn't say, it's also kind of like a fireman hang and drop, though. It's not like you're diving head first and in you go and hope for there's a soft landing.
so I'll straddle the window and hug the side of the window, but I stay low. I stay as low as possible,
Okay.
and I keep my head on the outside. So, my head's on the outside. And then when I'm ready to go in, I quickly go in and then fall to the floor and start my search immediately. And I learned this at a conference, and I was always diving in, always diving in. And there's still nothing wrong with diving in head first. But, one of the instructors who, worked on a busy truck company, he goes, hey, there's nothing wrong with diving in, but there's going to be a time where you VES a window and the conditions change rapidly when you are entering that window that you're going to need to get out rapidly. And if you dive in head first, you're going to have to dive back out head first. Now, that's not to say if I go in straddling the window and go in and conditions change rapidly, I'm not going to have to dive in head first. But at least I give myself that tactical pause of, all right, I'm outside, check conditions, boom, now I can go inside and start my search.
I've never considered that.
Just something to consider. Like I said, there's
Yeah,
nothing
I'll
wrong
have to
with
try
diving in
it,
head
work it
first.
in, and see if I can make something of it.
So the other thing is, my wife makes fun of me. I got the long torso, short leg syndrome. I got the T-Rex arms.
So I was going to say that because the bunker pants are also, if you get that,
Yeah.
they build them. Why they still do this? They build them where the crotch goes all the way down to your knees.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, to lift your legs up over the windowsill is harder than if you had no bunker pants
So
on.
and that's the other thing I tell guys, especially training. We put furniture in these rooms. We have stuff laying around. So if you have trouble getting in the window is easy from a ladder, because if you step up on a couple rungs higher than where you should be, you can step up and into a ladder or dive into that window.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have trouble getting out, you've completed your search, negative results. I'm coming out that window, and now you got to do the whole lift your leg up above that windowsill. If that's the way you're going to enter or exit, why not just move a piece of furniture over and use that as a step? There's an end table right here.
You have to again. You got to train that way.
Yeah,
and we it's funny because we show them the dive method or the fireman hang and drop into the window type of thing, and they get so used to focusing on that technique or searching, feeling for the ground. Even if you slid a piece of furniture under there to assist them, because we don't want them getting hurt in training, they just brute force that thing out of the way. It's like, well, hey man, that was your step on the way out. It's kind of funny.
So if you enter in a VES head first, you're not exiting that window head first,
right?
Because that's an emergency procedure,
and you've already isolated it,
and you've
shut the chimney.
You're coming out, straddling the window, and exiting like a gentleman or a gentle lady. But if you have trouble getting up over that windowsill, who's the homeowner is going to come back in that room and say, "Oh, you move my end table underneath the window. How dare you?"
Yeah.
You put a footprint. You put a dirty footprint on my soot soaked mattress. It's like
something white that just there was the one piece of furniture that did not have the plastic on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything else is torched.
I don't know unless you live in our area, you're not going to get the plastic reference. But even so, let's say we are privileged enough to find a victim. I would say anything above 200 pounds, anything lower than 200 pounds, a single fireman should be able to get that out the window.
Yeah.
If they train. Now, what I tell firemen to do, especially in our company, is if the most benefit that interior firemen can do for that victim is to get from their waistline up out of that window, because that's going to give them fresh air. And then hopefully firemen are coming up to receive that victim. But that victim's got to come out head first.
Right.
And I know you talk about it when you teach. I talk about it when I teach. And my years of wrestling, is drilled into my head. Your body moves in the direction that your head goes. If think of a street fight, especially watch a girl street fight. They pull hair.
The hair.
And they pull that hair, and they wherever they pull that hair, their head's falling. I mean, there was like a street fight I was watching. You get sucked into these things on the YouTube or whatever, and this girl had her by the hair. You know, it is like an uncle. You hold your nephew by the
Hmm.
two arms and you swing them around in a circle and their legs come up. This girl was actually doing it to another girl by pulling on her hair and swinging her around. She was coming up off the ground. And my point is that your head follows the body. So if you can get that head out the window,
I mean, the
it's gonna
body follows the head.
the body follows the head. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
the
yeah,
body follows the head.
yeah.
And the other part of with wrestling and I watch my kids do jujitsu is body ergonomics. The body only bends in certain ways. So orientating your victim to the window properly is going to make or break the operation. Your back doesn't bend backwards unless
No.
you're, a contortionist. Your back bends at the waist forward. So when we get our victims to the window, they should be feet up against the wall, belly up, head up. You get in a sit up position, you get your arms underneath their both armpits, and then you do that power clean maneuver, and then you hook your arms on that windowsill. That gets them up there. And then, going back to wrestling, I get my knee in the crotch to hold them up there. Then I put one hand on the back of the head, and then while my knee's still holding their crotch there, I'll scoop underneath between their legs, and then I pull up on the one thigh and push the head out at the same time
Right.
because the body follows the head. Now the head is completely out. Their torso, hopefully their waistline is at the windowsill, hanging out, ready for the fireman on the ladder to receive the victim. And if you train that way, and if you train that technique, it's seamless.
So, VIS, not a primary search. Just cannot state that enough. There may be times, I have heard stories that people have changed tactics as they're coming back out. Maybe the order comes down, hey, I need you to go back through there type of thing. I've seen that mostly in training, and I've heard stories of that happening at fires, not around us, but I kind of noted that, and I don't know if that's safe. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? If somebody goes, hey, on second thought, why don't you go back through that isolated door and do a search? As if it's like a secondary. Do we not have enough people? I don't have enough of the stories around, just around it. It kind of.
If I'm to the mindset, if you search that room and you've isolated it, come down the ladder, start the search from another room. That room's been searched.
Yeah, done.
Yeah.
Throw the X on the door,
And,
in your head, but.
I just look at, I think of my house. We just posted a picture on our Instagram of guys searching via a protected porch or a garage. Like, I look at my house, you can get 3 bedrooms with one ladder. If you ladder the garage or the front of the house where the porch is, you can get the master bedroom. You can get the bedroom on the AD corner, and you get the bedroom on the CD corner. There's only one bedroom you can't get from the first level roof. So that's another thing with VES. If you can get 3 bedrooms with one ladder via if the roof's still intact and there's no fire impingement on that roof, that's a win. You can VES 3 rooms relatively quick, especially with a 3-man company up on there. Company officer stays out, supervises their guys. You've got 2 rooms done in 20 seconds.
Yeah, and is this another thing that kind of speeds this up or slows it down? Is are there known victims or not?
Right.
We're assuming one was because we've already made a decision to at least hit one room with a VEAS. If it's a enter through the second floor window or through another, let's say not the first floor window, but via ground ladder, okay, that's a search tactic, and we're not looking to isolate just that room. We're looking to make entry. Those are 2 different things. It's kind of sets up the same, but only because of conditions that are changing. Known victim and fire impingement that we have to isolate that door, or that door for that room, or are we going up there because too much congestion?
Yeah. There was so I sat in the Andy Fredericks conference last year. I'm hoping to go again this year. And one of the presenters, I got it written down in another notebook. Oh, I do have it. I thought it was in my Jeep. So he had an acronym for when you're sizing up when you get on scene and somebody is out there screaming, they get the my baby, my baby, my baby. And he had a very good acronym to kind of checklist to ask the person, I gotta find it. Apologize for not having this, but it just popped in my head. But the one thing that came to my head is one of the letters was S, and the S was for species. So the acronym is
Ah,
Signal. The acronym Signal, Signal. Species. I can't even read my handwriting because I was writing so fast. I was for something. Then it was gender, name, and location. Big thing with the species, someone says my baby, my baby, my baby. Their baby could be a cat. Their baby could be a bird. Could be a lizard, or it could actually be a baby. The gender, the name, the age, and location is all good information to have because, you know, my baby's in there. All right, how old is it? Oh, my baby's 24 years old. So your baby is the 24-year-old that's still living in the basement of the mother's house, playing video games. So, we can all picture in our head what that person looks like. The name is a good one too. So if they're able to talk and able to hear, kids hide. If you can get out there, hey, so and so, it's the fire department here to help you. Maybe you can hear, they'll call back out to you.
yeah, a child might hear their name and go, "Oh, they must be familiar with me." Their reaction
Right.
now adjusts to that.
Exactly. I wish I could read my own handwriting on that what
For
it
the
was.
for the eye.
Yeah, for the eye. Maybe I'll send Chief Bastinelli a message and ask him what the I was on Signal because I can't read my own handwriting. That's who it came from, was Brian Bastinelli from Harrisburg, PA,
Oh, okay.
and that's what they teach down there is Signal. And I wrote it down and like just writing so fast because there's so much information come in some of these conferences that are real good. You just write so fast, and next thing you know, you can't read your own handwriting. So we've hit on almost all of our topics. One, and I he doesn't disagree with me. He just doesn't do it. Is the other boss, the other truck boss in my company, and we'll get into what that is. But what tools are you bringing in for a search? You sit in the back seat.
I'm a backseater, so I'm typically the OV man. So it's depends on what's happening there. Lately, we've had a lot of new people. That's why I've popped over the OV. But let's say I'm not. Let's say I'm going in with the boss. I'm always grabbing my can, and my boss is always grabbing his tick. And then between the two of us, we have some sort of hand tool as well. Each of us have hand tools. I like to carry a Halligan. He pretty much carries the Halligan because it's up front in the front seat. I haven't seen him use the officer tool in a while. I know you're a fan of that, but I don't think he really fancies it too much.
So I would say that depends on what fire I'm going to. If we're going to a commercial fire, I'm grabbing the officer's tool. And the only reason I'm grabbing that officer's tool
The
is
locks.
because you can pull locks with it.
Yeah.
That forcing Adams Wright's commercial storefront doors, there's not a tool that's better on the market right now than the Rex tool, the officer's tool. You pull it off, the key tool is right there. The key tool's falling out of ours. So, we have developed other tools in our pockets that we can
Everyone's got one.
that
Yeah.
can manipulate the locking mechanism. If I'm going to a commercial structure for any alarm, I'm bringing the officer's tool. Residential structure, 9 times out of 10, I got the Halligan in my hand, along with the tick. A flashlight is also very important
I
for.
guess you're right. That is a tool. I'm just so used to it. Doesn't matter what it is. It's always on me. Even extrication, it always comes with
Yeah,
me.
but yeah,
Box light.
I've even started taking it on the flashlight. I grab it on EMS calls. I mean, how many calls are going into these houses where the they either haven't paid their electric or they don't have a light in their bedroom for whatever
Yeah.
reason, and there's no lights. But that flashlight, not only is it good, and you shouldn't have your flashlight on a lot. It should be turn it on, look at a quick scan, turn it off, because especially if you have an LED flashlight, that
Hmm.
LED light refracts and reflects off the smoke particles and it actually kind of blinds you more than it helps you see. If
Yeah.
you have an older
It's going down the highway in a snowstorm
exactly,
with
and
your lights on.
we talked about that
Yeah.
before. And if you have an old halogen light, the light's a little more diffused. It doesn't really penetrate the smoke more, but it doesn't reflect and refract off that smoke as much as an LED light. But what the LED light can do, especially at ground level, you put that light on, and if you can see the smoke movement, if that wherever whichever way the smoke is moving at the floor, it's probably going to point you in the direction of the fire, and it's going to assist you in finding that fire, because the fire is going to be pulling in the oxygen at
Hmm.
floor level and venting out the hot at the products of combustion at the ceiling level. So if we can turn on our flashlight for a couple seconds, read the smoke, which way is that smoke going, we're going to be able to find the fire a little more efficient, along with our tick. The ticks that are out there now, they're awesome. The refresh rate, the low, even the low sensitivity mode on them, you're losing almost zero quality of the image nowadays. Um, but a flashlight's important. Just don't have it on all the time because it will blind you. It will inhibit. It's if you have it on more than you should, it's gonna make things worse for everybody.
I gotta say that like 50% of the time, because of that box light, when I made that switch, it was actually something you brought up years ago. Hey, give this a shot. And I'm like, I don't want to carry that stupid thing around. The conditions you told me to try them and changed my mind on it, and now that's my primary go-to for a hand light. Uh,
It,
and that's because of search is really what it came down to, is for searching. When you're down low, you can look forward, you can pull up, you can, whatever you got to do. But I got to say, about 50% of the time that I do use the light in a smoke condition, I pop that button, yank it off me, set it down on the ground, pointing up or something. It's a beacon for either another crew to come relieve or whatever, or find my own way out. I use
yeah,
it as a beacon.
yeah, and I kind of joke. It's like if you're gonna work on our truck company, you got to buy a box light.
Yeah,
You're
and
not
they're
a
getting up there now.
yeah, you're not a true truckie if you don't have a box light. I thought about buying the nicer box light. I just can't. I can't justify spending the nut on a $200 something box light when I already
I
have. I
don't
already
need it.
got two.
Yeah.
Um, but and I said it to you, and I've said it to other people. Is everybody's got the survivor lights attached to their coat. If you need a flashlight, now you have to contort your body up and point your body and everything where that light needs to go, where that box light that's hanging on your hip. You can just take it with your hand, and wherever your hand's pointing, that's where it's going. And then you turn it off and throw it behind you and continue on searching. The other thing that's nice about it, like you said, it's got the seatbelt buckle. So if you
Hmm.
have to disconnect it quick, boom, you hit the seatbelt buckle and it's off.
You can pull it through, whether it's over your pack or under your pack. It slides right on through.
Yeah, I wear mine over just because so I have the maneuverability with it. I know a lot of guys wear it under their pack and it's kind of, you know,
Over.
you wear it over.
I wear it over. It's the last thing,
Yeah,
other than my helmet, it's the last thing I put on.
it's the last thing I put on. There are I see guys, they take the survivor light and they wear it like a almost like a belt around their waist.
Oh, yeah, I've never.
And
Yes, I have. I know what you're talking about.
to me, and this is just person, this is if you go look at old school truck companies when they were wearing 3/4 length coats and hip boots, they used to have what they call a truckman's belt. It was a leather belt. It
Hmm.
almost looked like a weightlifter's belt, not as thick in the back. But you can still buy a truckman's belt. But the problem is our coats are too short for them now, so the coat might ride up, and then the belt's underneath your coat. But what that truckman's belt used to do is used to hang your. They used to have before box lights. They used to have scuba diving lights. That's what they used to use, and they would hang them from the belt, or they would put their scarab for their axe in that truckman's
Gotcha.
belt. And now these guys see a truckman's belt and they see the flashlight hanging off it. So now they wear their streamlight like a belt. I don't think some people, maybe they do know the origins of a truckman's belt or why it was there, but that's not really the intent of the streamlight belt. The other thing I've seen is a lot of these leather companies now are making streamlight leather straps, but the problem is they don't have the buckle on them.
No.
And you have to do a maneuver, and you got to do something. You got to jettison that light for whatever reason. You're kind of stuck with that light on you, especially if you wear it underneath your pack.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
you're the guy that needs CPR and your buddies
yeah,
are trying to rip your stuff off. You can't
yeah,
do that quick maneuver
yeah,
to slide you out. You know, they got
yeah.
to fumble with this giant belt
Right. Um,
can. Is the
can yeah, that's where we're going.
can's the
That's where we're
biggest
going.
one. I'm
The
guessing
can.
that's what you were looking
That's where
for,
we're
but
going. We're going with a can. So the guy that sits behind the officer in our rig is the can man. He is responsible for carrying the 2.5 gallon can and a 6 foot hook. The truck company, the truck company that works out of headquarters on my shift, the can man brings a can and then leaves it at the door, leaves it at the front door if it's a working fire. I do not let my can man let go of that can. And my thought is, and this is where my mind is, if we're searching ahead of that hose line and we've, a, a good room, a good bedroom fire going, maybe impinging on the hallway, can I knock that fire back enough to get to the door and then isolate it? Hopefully the door's not burned through. Or if the fire is still contained in that one room, can I hold the fire in check a little bit and get a search of that room with the 2.5 gallons and then back out? If you don't have that 2.5 gallon can, you can't do anything.
right.
Or
Don't forget you're searching ahead of the line. You know,
correct,
something happens to you, that's your safety parachute.
right? And we have, and this and I think about this every time we have the retired lieutenant coming in to give his survival speech,
Hmm.
and they saw if when he saw the fire exposing up through that radiator, and they had a can on him, would it have delayed that flashover? You never know. You don't know.
Right.
They
Yeah.
didn't have a can with them. They were up on whatever division they were on. I think it was the third floor, forcing entry and conducting searches at the time. But they saw fire. He took note of it, and then they moved on. Well, if he had a 2.5 gallon extinguisher, could he have knocked it back a little bit? Would it have delayed the flashover? But then it plays in my mind, would it delayed the flashover enough where he would have got in deeper and the outcome would have been different?
Good point. And I think that's that discipline that you got to have with the can is knowing, all right, what's the primary function of it and what's its secondary. You
Right.
know, are you in a place where you can afford to? Are you in too deep and far enough away from that hand line to go? Ah, shoot, this thing's getting out of control. Maybe I should keep it in check. Right. That's kind of what's got to go through your head. Not, oh, look, fire, I'm going to put it out. And then, okay, well, great. You just used up, say, a gallon, maybe used up the whole 2.5. And then you continue your search. Do what are you
Yeah.
doing? You know, I kind of like to keep that as the reserve shoot. Use other options to mitigate those small things we come along. You know, first of all, if I've gotten somewhere where I found fire, can we isolate it? And then call for its location. Hey, we got it. It's right here. Bring the hand line up. And then maybe you got to help those guys get the hand line up. Who knows? But if they
Yeah.
go, no, we got we have an issue with the hose, or we have no water supply, something's wrong. Okay, now it's time to switch tracks to that. Let's hit it a little bit, keep it in check. We're not there to put it out. That's not its role, is to put everything
No,
in the world
no.
out
I mean, even though we joke about it that we like to steal fires from the engine with it,
all the time. Yeah.
but that's not our function.
Hmm.
My like you said, it's our reserve shoot. Confined space. You have that 10-minute pony bottle. That's what that 2.5 gallon can is. Can we knock back that fire enough to get in and perform a search in a room, before ahead of the hose line, and then once that search is completed, close the door. Now we have, maybe a gallon and a half left where we can keep the door's integrity by wetting the door frame down, wetting the outsides of the door down, because maybe the engines, for whatever reason, they're delayed getting the hose line in place. We've given the best chance to save that structure. Isolating that door, now we're given the best chance for our victims to, you know, be saved and rescued. The thing is, you know, a lot of guys, and we practice this in the academy. I think we started this, you know, when myself and the chief was running the truck companies, was, you know, putting in searching with the can and how do you search with the can. And I think that's the biggest bump or, you know, roadblock for guys carrying the can in with them on fires, is that they don't know how to search or how to carry the can and perform a search at the same time. You know, they think that shoulder strap is you wearing it like a handbag, like a women's
Yeah,
handbag.
you're slinging it. Yeah.
You're supposed to sling it over your shoulder and wear it off to the side. You know, my I don't tell my that the 2.5 gallon can is the backseater's responsibility. I just, you know, this is, we're going to search with it. They've developed their own techniques of how they're going to wear it. But, you know, I kind of give them ideas, you know, this, you know, put, when we're searching, the can goes in between your legs, hangs in between your legs, and then you search. So when you're ready for it, the can's right there.
Right.
When they're walking around an automatic alarm, they throw the can on their, it's still slinged across their shoulder like a bandolero, but it's behind them, so it's out of their way. Sometimes, yeah, depending on how they're searching or where we're searching, they might sling it behind them and have it rest on their back leg while they're searching. It's all up to them how they want to carry it, and I don't care how they carry it as long as they carry it with them in the structure with them.
Yeah, as long as it's with us, the crew.
Correct.
Which
One
is
hundred
funny.
percent.
We always set up our expectations of anybody that whether they float over for the day and they end up in that can position, or it's a new person altogether. Hey, if you're in that seat, you're bringing that can in. We want you to bring that every single time. Now, the young guy he was doing a rotation, so he was with us for quite a bit. He just rotated off, and it was his last shift with us. It was actually our last shift. It was a gas call. That's all it was. It was just a gas call, and he got off the rig. He always grabs, he's got the meter fired up and everything ready to go. He got off and started walking the building with the boss, and I happened to just lean back, and look ahead of the truck as they were passing that. Son of a bitch, no can. So I was like, okay, I got my tools. I ran around real quick. I didn't break his chops or anything, but I guess that's one of those calls that maybe you don't need it. To me, that kind of sounds like complacency. Oh, I don't need it for this. Well, how far are we going to take that? So I just ran around, grabbed it anyways. But I bring it with me all the time. That's kind of my OCD thing.
Yeah.
Always have that with our crew.
Now, our can fireman on our rig comes in with a hook, and
For all?
everything. And sometimes the hook, hook stays at the front door. Sometimes I make sure the hook comes in with us. And my thought is, especially if we're going searching above the fire, and most of our conversation has been talking about residential structure fire, but this is also very important in a commercial fire with drop ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
You go in with a can, we go above the fire in Division 2. Before I enter a room, I want my guy with a can to poke a hole in that ceiling. I want to make sure there's not fire above us. Because there's a fire above us, we got to do something else. We got to get a hose line up there.
As soon as you open that door, it's coming down on you.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
From
want
behind.
I don't want to be an oven. I don't want to be in an oven. If we have fire below us and we poke a hole, now we have fire above us. We're in between two fires. We have bigger problems. We got bigger problems to deal with. There have been cases. They talked about it when I was down in Flips, where the drop ceilings are holding a ton of heat, a ton of fire products of combustion. They had some sort of fire that developed between the floor and the drop ceiling, and they didn't poke a hole in it. Search crews went in. One of the drop ceiling tiles failed. It ended up in a backdraft situation, and I don't remember how injured the firemen were, if it ended up being a line of duty death or if it was just severe burns. But that kind of burned in my mind was, all right, we go to a commercial structure with drop ceilings. I want to make every room I enter, that before I get into that room, the door's getting opened up, I'm scanning with my tick, and then the next thing that's happening is the can man is poking a drop ceiling. make sure there's not fire above us.
Right. Yeah. We do that. We're pretty. I think we're pretty disciplined. I'd say. At least for every door, and then as we're searching for whatever it is, even if it's smells, we're always poking. Okay, every couple tiles, drop ceiling. If it's odor of smoke, we're looking to at least check up there to see if we, especially let's see, north of us, go straight north. At one of the corners, it's now a nail salon. I think it was a tattoo parlor before that and everything, nail and hair salon or something like that. Kitty corner from the quick fill there. And we've gone in there a few times chasing smoke where, and when you pop, they have drop ceiling in there. When you poke that, a tile up, it goes up quite a distance.
Yeah.
So even if you just peeked, you're not going to see anything anyways, but you got to get a tile up and move it out of the way to see way up there.
Yeah. I mean, that's all part of searching for fire.
Right.
That's the main job, is searching for fire. And, last thing I want to do is get caught in a backdraft. So, I can avoid that by inconveniencing my guy, and it shouldn't be an inconvenience because that's his job. Bring that 6-foot hook in, poke a hole, or move a ceiling tile out of the way, make sure we don't have fire above us. That's going to be a win for everybody.
Yeah, and just because we rolled up or the initial dispatch didn't say fire and we don't see any smoke, or there's just an odor, those odor calls, whether it's fume or smoke, those are great calls to practice this stuff on. Hammering that discipline is, you get in, start poking some tiles. What's the harm? You can move them back over. It's not a big deal. It's not like we're not telling you to, hey, for every CO alarm that chirps twice because it's a bad battery, go and smash, holes in the ceiling. No. But getting that discipline, that habit.
Context with this is not, I'm going in and searching bedrooms with a 6-foot hook. They're bringing the 6-foot hook. If we're going to Division 2 and we're bringing a 6-foot hook, that 6-foot hook doesn't have to go in the room with us to search. They can open up the door, poke a hole, set the hook off to the side, and then go on with their search. Now, he's still going to have the cannon between his legs, but that's going to free up his hands to conduct the search. I'm a big champion of searching with both my hands.
Versus swinging an axe handle.
Swinging a Halligan. Because your hands can feel, your tools don't have any feeling. And this is kind of contrary to what we were brought up with in the fire service, was to always have a tool in your hand because you might need it. Well, I can go in a room, shut the door, set my tool aside, and search that room. I know where my tool is. If I need it, I can go grab it. The problem is, I've been in the fire service for 20 years, and it's, once I've learned that skill, I still catch myself searching with a tool in my hand, and I got to be, put it down, start searching. But your hands can feel. Your thermal imager cannot, can it find a body? It might, but it can't see through clothes. It can't see through ice. It can't see through water. It can't see through blankets. So even if you scan this room and you can't find a body with that thermal imager, you still need to tactilely feel everything with your hands. You can't just poke at it with your Halligan or poke at it with an axe handle. You need to actually physically get on there and feel that, feel whatever the thermal imager is picking up on that screen. The other thing is, we can go into, how do we search a bedroom?
You mean like right hand, left hand mix, ducks in a row?
You putting 2 firemen in a bedroom? You're putting 1 fireman in a bedroom?
For us, we just do single. Maybe the boss or the second person is just in the doorway.
That's how it
kind
should
of
be.
Monitoring.
That's
how, swinging, doing the 6-sided view with the tick, while one person's in there. They pick a wall, start hovering around it, picking off of the wall, so they're getting sweeping the middle. Don't just butt up against it and walk like a dog around the outside of the room and make it back to the door. Okay, boss, yeah, we're good. Well, great, you got the circumference, you didn't get the area.
So I got in this discussion. It was a we'll say passionate discussion, and you know how I can get passionate about some things.
Very passionate.
It was at a state conference, and I was taking a truck company class, and one of our friends, who's now, he transferred to the city. Mm-hmm. We were doing search, and I was a lieutenant at the time, and he's still a fireman. He just transferred, and we were doing an orientated man search, if you want to go by the IFSTA standard, where the company officer stays at the door, and the fireman is orientated to the company officer, whoever is at the door, and one fireman goes in and searches the room, and you're in constant communication with each other. So the evolution ended, and he kind of berated us for not having both guys in this room. Now this fireman, he might be a boss right now, but this fireman, I see him every time I go to this conference, and I just kind of smirk and laugh at him. His department's a smaller city. They got like, I think 12, maybe 13 guys on a shift, and they have two colleges in their first due. One's a D3, one's a D1 college. They're substantial colleges. So I said to him, all right, I don't have any colleges in my first due. I go, I have residential structures. Bedrooms in my first due are average 10 by 10 on a big size, 10 by 12. That's not talking about a master bedroom. And some of the bigger houses, our master bedrooms might be 10 by 20, 15 by 20. So I said, okay, that's the square foot of the room with nothing in it. And at the time, I just had my second kid. And I think we just put a bunk bed in his room. And I said, my son's bedroom is 10 by 12. There's a bunk bed in there. There's a dresser. He's got a Lego table. And he's got whatever the hell else he keeps in that room. You put two firemen, average 200-pound firemen with an SCBA into that room together, you're going to be bumping all over each other, and a search isn't going to be done efficiently. You're going to miss things. You're going to be bumping into each other. You're going to be swearing at each other because you're going to be on top of each other. I said, you have to search dorms. I went to college. I didn't do very well in college. But I remember dorms are what, 12 by 12? Correct me if I'm wrong.
For a double, yeah, something like that.
So a dorm is 12 by 12. And in that dorm, there's 2 beds, 2 dressers, 2 desks, and a closet. Plus
one window.
One window. Maybe. Yeah. And then they put the refrigerator in there. They put the microwave. And if the college allows them, they put, all the other crap that's in that dorm room. I remember my dorm room. It was, you walk in the door, there's 2 beds on each wall, and there was the aisleway between
just
the 2
deer
beds.
path right down the middle.
That's it. So how are you getting 2 firemen in a dorm room? He goes, well, that's what we do. I said, you're on top of each other. It makes no sense. You're searching a dorm room. You're searching 2 beds. That's where they're going to be. Now, maybe they've lofted their bed up a little bit. So now you got to get your big boy pants on and get on top of that bed and search that bed. But putting 2 firemen in a bedroom to me, is wrong. It's inefficient. You're doing it wrong if you're putting 2 firemen in a bedroom. Master bedroom, maybe you get in there, the company officer scans it. He said, oh, we got a master bedroom here. I'm going to come in with you. If you're going left, I'm going right, and we'll meet. The master bedroom a little bit bigger. But putting 2 firemen in a bedroom is to me, it just doesn't make sense. It's never made sense.
So flip that around. What if it's, you said that if that officer does do that quick view, we call it the 6-sided. If they do a quick scan, is there ever a case where they go, hey, nothing's in there, skip it?
No.
Right. So you still at least got to get one person in there and somebody at the door to orientate.
Now, we've had fires and renovations, and there might not be a stitch of furniture in that room, and you do that 6-side and you see nothing because the house is being renovated or they just moved in. Maybe that's a time where I say, hey, we can skip this room. There's nothing there. But there
have you ever done something?
Yeah, we had a mutual aid fire in a reno. I was a training officer, and me and who my senior fireman now was on the engine company. They went up there, and when we went upstairs, there was the rooms were empty because they moved in and they were renovating, and nobody was home, and there was rooms there was literally no furniture at all. It was just carpet. That's all it was. I mean, that has happened.
I never considered it. I don't think I've seen that. Come across that one.
But, so the other thing is you come across a bed. And I'm going to date myself by saying, given this reference, is you don't do the Superfly Jimmy Snuka splash from the top rope onto the bed. You got to get up. There's different tactics of searching beds. Whatever tactic you use, make sure you perfect it in the way you do it. But one, I like to slither up on top of the bed, starting from a corner, and then I kind of starfish out on it. And the other thing is if you have kids, a lot of kids sleep towards the corners of the beds up against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get your fingers and make sure you sweep that corner of the bed, all corners of the bed up against the wall. Another tactic that I like is starting in a corner and pulling all the sheets towards me. Especially if there's a small kid, they're going to ride the sheets and they're going to fall right in your hands. Even if you don't find anything, you still got to get up on that bed and search along the walls. The other thing is if you come across a bed, you always should raise your hand, especially if you have a 4-poster bed. You find you get a 4-poster bed, you have to put your hand up to make sure there's not
Yeah.
a bunk bed there.
Yeah. Even if it's a large bed, you don't want any stepbrother incidents where they built one on top. But
Yeah, exactly. But you come across cribs. If they're a good parent, they shouldn't have. If they're a newborn baby, they should. The only thing that should be in there is their swaddle. And they're wrapped up like a little burrito.
mm-hmm.
All you have to do is tilt the crib towards you. You should know what a crib feels like. It's feel like the jail cell. Ding, 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 ding. With the
cup,
yeah, exactly.
the mug.
Yeah, you take it if you're going to a baby's room, unless that baby is like a ninja warrior coming out of the womb, they're not getting out of that crib. Tilt the crib towards you. Everything rolls to the corner, and then just sweep the corner of that crib. And then scoop the baby up, and then go on your way with a rescue. Searching underneath beds. How are you searching underneath beds? What are you doing?
Well, you got to you can start with sweeping with your hand, seeing how much. You're not only just sweeping out and go, yeah, no, we're good. You got to kind of see how much space you have. If you don't check that top first, you don't want to start tipping this thing over or sliding out of the way. Check the top first in case something gets jammed up. I've seen people tip them. If I got space and I can feel walls, like if I stick my hand all the way under and I can reach as far as I can and then tap, tap, tap all the way around, especially that far corner, then I guess I kind of call it a day. But typically I'll move it out of the way, position myself so that it moves the full distance of the bed, 1-to-1 length. If there's space, check that floor and then put the bed back. Just because you don't want to disorientate yourself. It's not a good idea to throw furniture around or move it.
Yeah.
I've seen other people, if they do have the axe handle, stick it under there. But again, it's the only thing you really use a stick for is finding a body at the bottom of a pond. That's the only time you're a ridge in the pond or something like that. You can't really feel.
I'm not a big bed flipper proponent. Like I said, I got short legs, but I can, I'll use my legs more than I use my arms to prod. Then if I do feel something, then I'll try to get in there with my arms. But if I feel something in my legs, that's when the bed flip comes up, because it's a lot easier to just grab somebody from on top than it is to try to pull them out from under a bed. I mean, try laying on your stomach and pull a human being. Now, if they're a small kid, it might be a little bit easier, but there's the bed frame. Depending on how high the bed frame is, are they going to get stuck underneath the bed frame? And that's another thing with flipping beds. You might need a second fireman. Hey, victim in here. He's underneath the bed.
Yeah.
Now you got to get someone in. Make sure that bed doesn't come back down on top of you guys. Then we got a whole other situation. But, the closets are a big thing for kids. I'm pretty sure my son is not going to hide in the closet because I call it the black hole. It's just when he is it's the typical, hey, clean your room. And the bulldozer comes out and everything goes in the closet. And then I don't even know how he does it, but he gets his closet door shut before everything falls out.
Yeah, it's bulging at the hinges.
Yeah. Yeah. But so I know I should put a label on the door, on his bedroom door. Check in the bed or check under his Lego table, because that's where he's going to be. He's got like a little fort underneath his Lego table that he gets pissed off at his sister, and that's where he goes hides. But kids will hide, and I see it with my kids all the time. My son, if he's mad at me or his mother or his sister, he'll send himself to his room like I did as a little kid. I'm going to my room, slam the door, and then he goes hides underneath his Lego table. He's got all the books lined up, so it's like a little wall. You can't even find them. But that's his hiding spot. Uh, my eldest daughter, she's going to be 13 in September. Typical 13-year-old. She's going to be in her bed. There's no hiding spot for her. They're not going to hide. They're just going to send themselves and go pout in their bed or whatever they do. My youngest, she'll probably be in my bed. It's how she is. But hiding spots, you see on the internet these DIY things where these parents are building these little reading nooks in the knee walls and stuff like that. And
yeah, I didn't even think that. Yeah, you're right. Using any kind of space that they have, they're starting to just knock it out. And you got to crawl in there. It's not like it opens up.
Right. It's like they got a Harry Potter room underneath the stairs, but they're anywhere now. They're trying to use all the space they can get for whatever they need. A lot of the stuff you can find on the Rescue Surveys website. Old people, you're going to find them in the bathrooms. And that was 100% the case with the grab the guys made a couple Christmases ago. Guy was trying to put the fire out, and then he realized he wasn't going to put the fire out. And for whatever reason, maybe it was just, not enough oxygen, so he wasn't making decisions correctly. He reverted back to his, fight or flight. And his flight took him to the bathroom, and that's where they found him, face down in the bathroom. And he was an elderly gentleman.
Probably went through. I know they definitely did it in the Cold War era, 50s and whatnot. That's what was taught. Children, when you're in the class, when you're in school, you go underneath the desk. Like a wooden desk is going to stop this,
right.
An atom bomb. But fallout was in the tub.
Yeah, you get the
iron tubs and
cast
everything.
iron tubs, man.
Yeah, but then the other thing is now we even still have. You might even see that more prevalent today. Is a more modernized version of that down south, just because of tornadoes and whatnot.
Right. But if you go back to Rescue Surveys, from puberty on up, they're going to be at the means of egress, the most common means of egress.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, we teach it in the academy. If you come across a parent, and I always say, if they're a good parent, they're going to have their kid with them. So make sure when you find a parent, flip them and sweep underneath the parent. Make sure they're not covering up a kid.
Yeah.
If they're a good parent, they're going to be protecting their kid at all costs. So the other thing, we talked about it in the beginning, and we talked about it with doing second floor searches from the ground ladders. Finding the stairs is pretty important for just conducting searches, finding the fire, locating victims, sizing up that building. And we've talked about this with the Size Up podcast we did a couple episodes ago. But a good company officer and a seasoned fireman, and should be passed down to the probationary fireman, is looking at a structure. You should know where the stairs are just looking at it from the outside, based on the type of construction, the era, the time period that the house was built. All that plays into effect, and you should know where the stairs are.
At least in your first due, and be pretty darn familiar with the stuff that's in your district as well. You should be familiar with the types of buildings in your thing. I'm not saying you're going to have to know everything about a modular home if you don't live where modular homes are, but no stairwells typically in those. But you get my drift.
I mean, key features to look for on some of these houses, like on a 2.5, if you see that window out of place on the side of the house, that window is the natural light, is a natural light for the landing. So if I look at that window seems out of place, that's a stairwell. Now if I look at a 2-story colonial with a door right in the center, the stairway is probably going to be right in. You open up that door, boom, the stairway should be right there. gets a little funky when we get into some of the patio homes because those stairways are in different spots. We can think of the patio homes that are in our first due, where the stairway is actually in the back of the house,
Hmm.
where you walk all the way, but you walk through the front door and you got to walk all the way in the back, and then the stairway leads from C to A,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
does take a turn. But that comes from knowing your first due. You're not going to know where the stairwell is on those houses unless you get in them. There's no way to really know. But if you have two of those patio homes that are next to each other, the stairwells are most likely going to be mirrored.
Yes.
They're going to
Yes.
be next. You see what I'm saying? They're
Hmm.
sharing that. They're sharing that firewall. So if you're a truck company and you're assigned the um, exposure house and you need to go Division 2 to check for extension, you should. All right, the
Take a peek
stairwell.
at the good one, and
Yeah.
there's your answer
Yep.
for a
Exactly.
mirrored answer for.
Right. Right. Um. So we have an SOG for searching high rises. I think it's pretty standard across the country.
I know it's in most of the major textbooks too.
Yeah.
You
So
know.
fire floor above the fire, and then the topmost floor of the building,
Yep. And then work your way down,
and work your way down.
which kind of I think most people do that without they do that without realizing where it comes from.
Yeah.
Because most places, at least around us, most places are only 2-story houses. So if you have a
Yeah.
first floor fire, you're searching the fire floor, right, which is the first floor, and then you're going all the way up, which is the second floor, and you're working your way down. Well, there's no further down except for perhaps the basement,
Right.
which different thing altogether. But we're doing that anyways. We just don't realize it's when we have more than two, I'd say, right?
Three.
First, do you do the first, then the third, then second? Would you make that call if you were unfamiliar?
I mean, the
No,
standard.
because you
Yeah.
that one, then the one. No, it'd be 1, 2. I take that back. It'd be 1, 2, and then fire floor above, all the way up. So it'd be 1, 2, 3. So it
Yeah.
was a first floor fire. Yeah. See, it's like I think it's like when you're trying to put it on paper and explain the whole thing. It's just I think we naturally all do it anyways, for the
Right.
most part, except for high rises, which is to your point.
The last thing I'd like to discuss is this is one of my pet peeves in training during search, and this I know you've seen it, and you've seen it at our county facility with our firefighter 1 classes, and I think it's gotten better with some of the instructors they've hired out there. But I remember as a volunteer going through firefighter 1 and doing the manual searching. And when they were, you would go through and search the burn building or whatever they had you searching, they would have you call out everything you found, which is good to do.
Yeah.
But you would go through and you would search like, all right, here's a window. All right, here's a bed. I'm searching the bed. I'm searching under the bed. And having your students call out what they're searching is good for learning, because then it drives in their mind that's, yes, this is what I have to do. And then when they get into a real job, when they go across, oh, that's a window, and they can say, all right, to their, hey, I got a window here, type of thing. What always set me off about those search drills, and I see it at conferences. Every once in a while I'll see it at the county facility. I don't know if you see it at your county facility with some of your instructors, but they'll be like, well, you missed something. And you're thinking like, what did I called out everything? There was no victim. Oh, you missed the remote on the end table, or you missed,
Mm.
it's like, what does that care? Or you've done your search and, oh, I got an end table here, and okay, it's an end table, and you move on, and they tell you, oh, why didn't you open up that drawer on the end table? It's like, what's going to be in the drawer? What do I care? We're
I
looking
don't know.
for
Seinfeld taught me, there could be three
right,
three
and
people laying in those things.
we're looking what in your mind. If you're searching for life in your mind, you should be saying to yourself, I'm searching for a baby. That's the smallest thing I'm going to come across. I'm searching for a baby. If you come across an adult, okay, I've come across adult. But if you're searching for the most difficult thing you're going to find, which is going to be a baby, all the other stuff will be, you'll come naturally, because if you come across a kid, they're a little bit bigger. I can identify that. But if you're searching for a baby, they're wrapped up as tight as can be in a swaddle, or whatever their parents put them in, a jumpsuit, a little onesie. If that's what my mind says of what I'm searching for, I should be able to identify everything else. I don't need to worry about the remote control. I don't need to worry about searching a desk drawer. It's funny you say Seinfeld, because that's probably dating you as well. And Kramer was housing
That's the one I'm talking
yeah,
about. I didn't want to say it.
yeah, he was having
The
people,
businessmen.
the businessman sleeping in
The
his
businessmen.
dresser. But you look at the truck manual that we publish in our state, it shows not so much a dresser, but for these daycare centers that have kids in them, it's almost like a pet store type thing,
Mm-hmm.
where they put a little kid bed, and then the screen drops down and it latches, and you have like 4, maybe 8 beds on a wall for babies. You could have a wall of babies in these daycare centers. I haven't seen any of our daycare centers.
Yeah, I was just trying to think. Even the one that's up there on the north side, kind of heading towards that same nail salon. Trying to think if there was one in there. I don't recall seeing anything like that.
I mean, I have seen daycare centers with an abundance of cribs, but I've never
Mm-hmm.
seen the wall of baby beds, which they publish in our truck manual. But I just, do you see that? Is that still out there, being instructors hammering on new firemen that hey, you didn't pick out this little widget on the table?
Not not in the place where not in my county out here. No,
But
we
I mean,
don't. It's kind of calling out, and I think even if I'm trying to think, I no, it does not stand out to me. So I want to say no, but I do remember doing Fire One and Fire. Yeah, it's kind of. I think I did Fire One maybe twice. Now back in where we work, and the intent I believe was to get you comfortable verbalizing something. Hey, speak up. You're in there. You're doing stuff. You have to speak up. Be loud. It's a confidence building. But then there was never any follow up with, oh,
Yeah.
okay, not that much confidence. You don't need to
Right.
call out, the remote, the chair. I got a chair. I got a mirror. I got a dude. Just
Yeah,
I
just
got a
search.
window. Everybody
Yeah.
should probably know where that second form of egress is, and then move on. And back then it really wasn't that long ago, but the technology has changed. You look at we use the MSAs, which have the voice meters, so we can, it's not the clearest thing, but it's a hell of a lot clearer than the old Scott packs that had no voice meter, unless you had
Right.
the one person in class that had one that was mounted on the side of the mask, but you couldn't hear. So when you started hearing somebody, mumble, you kind of, your ears perked up. You weren't sure. Oh, they must have
Right.
a victim, because you couldn't hear victim. You couldn't hear couch. You just heard voice. Must be something. I better go to him. So I agree with you that needed to come back around and go, okay, confidence building. Now let's dial in what we should be talking about.
Yeah. It's something that the other lieutenant on my group, it was just something we always kind of joked about. It's like, what do I care? What do I care about the remote control on the table?
Now as you say that, I'm going to mess with them next time we drill with them. Oh, I got 2 more TV remotes.
Yeah. Is there anything else you could think of with this search stuff? I mean,
Nothing leaping out other than we talked about. We answered our five big questions there that we had written down and discussed it all. And what stands out is this is all, I don't want to say normal to us, but this is all built into our culture where we are talking about, and we've practiced this in the past. It's not new to us. This is something we've just always had, and the generations before us did. And I would like to encourage people to start putting that into their curriculum, whether that's your SOGs or it's just the drill level. Got to get in and search. And if anybody out there is listening that says, hey, well, when we get to a fire, we don't have enough people and I got 2 engines, I'm going to focus on just putting water on that fire. I don't want to say you're wrong, because you're not wrong. You should put water on that fire, but split some people off. Let's get a search going, because it's not the only thing that's happening on that fire ground. Any boss that's out there listening, especially in a smaller area or more remote, see if you can start devising a plan where you can get, with limited power, a search going. It's important. That search does affect the outcome. Same thing with a size up. Get a
Yeah,
size up, say it on the radio, get a search going. I'm not saying forfeit water for a search, but start putting it in that those are, like you said, they're both plan one, and it's 1A and 1B, or however you want to say it. Plan A, 1 and 2. They both need to happen.
yeah. We said it before that searching for that fire is only going to make the hose line deployment easier. Instead of going indiscriminately through a house. I mean, if the fire's showing, you know where the fire is. But if you just have smoke showing, you got to go and search for that fire. And if you're just doing it with a hand line, it's going to take a lot longer than two guys without a hand line going in and searching for the fire. And even if you can have that company officer maybe pop the door and get in a couple feet, I'm not saying going by himself, but go in a couple feet, scan with a tick, locate the fire. And we talked about you can use your flashlight to follow the smoke. That's still searching. You've searched for the fire. You've kind of located the general direction, and it's only going to help that hand line get in there and extinguish the fire and stop the problem. That's what we're ultimately trying to do: put the fire out, stop the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Why have, let's say, 4 people? You got four people all together. Okay, maybe because 2 in, 2 out, and all that stuff. Let's say you got six people all together. If you can break 2 off to go and get a search, that's better than having 6 people trying to hump hose all through a building while also searching. That's 1 crew doing 2 tasks versus 2 crews each doing 1 task, type of thing. I don't know if that really equates the same way I'm trying to mean it, but break it down, make it easier. Get that search in, let them map that out so that hand line has an easier path, less resistance going in. Then they don't have to do so much work.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So we didn't even talk about it, but I think we're in agreement that searching off the hose line is not the premier tactic to do.
As a secondary, perhaps, like a mop up while we're waiting. If you have, I would say, kind of the general rule would be no, you're not searching off of a line. I mean, there's a case that maybe if you're in the mop up, transitional type of thing, it's already out. We're just kind of mopping up some hot spots. One can break off kind of a little to the left, a little to the right, but probably not too far away, right? You want to maintain communication. Or if it's one of the positions like a secondary or tertiary hand line that's in place, maybe protecting a stairwell or some sort of corridor. Okay, hey, yeah, it's not a bad idea to break off and do it. Are we still going to send another crew up there to search that same area? Yeah, probably. But if they want to get it started and they happen to come across the victim before that, primary search company got in there, I don't see a reason why they cannot. But going back, yeah, we don't practice it that way.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't
But
search off the line.
we don't just because the way we run. But I'll put this scenario out there where, and I know there's a lot of social media pages out there, and a lot of talks out there about not searching off the hand line. But there are times where it needs to be done. And the scenario I will give you is you go to a volunteer department. It doesn't even have to be a volunteer department. It could just be a small career department, and they run just an engine.
Mm-hmm.
They go for a bedroom fire on Division 2 of a normal 2-story colonial. Say it's the back bedroom. They get up there. They establish a good hose stream. They're getting a knock on the fire. Why can't the officer and the backup man start searching off that hose line
After they hit the bedroom?
They've established a good hose line. They've established a good fire stream. Radio communication. We got a knock on the fire. Water's on the fire. The guy in the nozzle is doing a great job hitting that fire. The company officer can look back at the backup man and say, hey, start getting a search of these rooms.
Yeah, I guess so. I would think depends on the crew. If it's more okay, it's just a little bit of embers left, and this guy's, the nozzleman's just kind of hitting all these embers and kicking some stuff over. Yeah, that's kind of more where I would trust that to break off if it were me. Versus hey, there's still a ton of flame going on in that room. All right, man, you got it. You're good. We're gonna
Yeah,
we're gonna take off.
maybe not leave the officer there, but if the backup hose line's already up there, there's no more hose that needs to be flaked out. There's no more pushing hose line up the stairs. The backup man comes up. The company officer says, "Hey, get a search of those 2 rooms, or start searching these rooms." To me, in my mind, that should be done, and the hose line now becomes the quote unquote orientated person. He can orientate himself to that hose line and start hitting
Yeah.
those rooms, especially if another company is coming. There are smaller career departments where they run a single engine, or they're running 2 engines with 2 guys on them, or you have the volunteer department where you get a business day fire, a Monday through Friday fire in business hours from the 9 to 5 fire, where you're going to get a handful of guys on that one engine, and your mutual aid is 10-12 minutes out. Search has got to get done.
Yeah,
So establish.
they definitely got to get done.
Yeah.
The time that it happens with something that situation, I would just think I'd have to trust the caliber of people we got on that hand line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can they multitask like that?
Yeah.
Once upon a time, our own department, when it was one engine and what was it, a pickup truck?
Right.
So it was a couple guys in the engine and 2 in the pickup truck. Way back at the beginning, that's kind of what they had to do.
And it's not. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, but when we were a smaller career department, we had the one engine with 2 guys on it, and then we had the duty officer in the fire SUV. I remember my boss before I got promoted, God rest his soul, he's passed away. But when he was long story, but he was a fireman at the time. I was on the job, and the story I got told from our senior man that's now retired was because he was pumping the fire. Your senior man was the lieutenant at the time.
Okay.
I don't know if you're catching how that that time
Yep.
period.
Yep.
So the fireman who ended up being my captain before I got promoted, they had a vacant fire. Now it's unoccupied until we say it's unoccupied. We still have to search it. And at the time, it was just when the engine was running after 6 o'clock at night, the truck company closed. It turned into a volunteer house. The engine goes for this fire. And the story I got told by my senior man who was pumping that fire is he had 2 floors of fire when he got on scene. And this was confirmed by the lieutenant who was a volunteer at my time, volunteer at the time, lieutenant that works on my group on the truck company. Fireman went in with a hose line by himself. They didn't know if the structure was occupied. And I'm not saying this is right, wrong, or indifferent, especially to OSHA standards that we can talk about.
It's going to be a whole nother one.
When he went in, he would knock fire down, close the hose line down, search a room, come back to the hose line, push in, knock more fire down, shut it down, search the next room, come back to the hose line, knocked more fire down, shut the hose line down, searched. I was told, this was told by the lieutenant that is now on my group, at the time was a volunteer. He showed up later on our volunteer rig. He said when they got there on the volunteer rig, this fireman knocked all the fire down on the first floor and had all the first floor searched by himself. By the time he got there, the chiefs, he walked up to the chief, says, "What do you need me to do?" He says, go find so-and-so. He's up on Division 2. And the lieutenant told me, he goes, when I got to the front door and looked up the stairs, he goes, it was just orange with glow and then the silhouette of this fireman knocking fire down, and he was setting it down and going and searching the bedroom at the time. And then at the time he went up and backed him up. But I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. but that just goes to the point that you can conduct a search off a hose line. Now, this is an extreme situation,
Right.
but I would think a backup fireman should be able to, once the job is done, backing up and humping hose, they should be getting in there and conducting searches, especially in limited manpower. That, to me, that's a good search culture. To bring it
Yes.
back to bring it back to what we're talking about, search culture. A search has got to get done, and if you're going to be an aggressive search orientated department, if you just have an engine, you still got to get that search done, and
And
it comes back to
and
training that way.
it's training, and it's the caliber of people that we have.
Yep.
I think what breeds the caliber is definitely the training. But if you can get that hand line to that fire floor, whether it doesn't matter what type of building or which floor, but if you can get that hand line in, make a quick knock, you kind of had to search your way through it to get there. We make that knock, then you started breaking off, and then you're continuing that search. That's a lot of tasks. I think
Right, and
it's got to take people with really, really good discipline.
and NFPA is a lot of things. There's a lot of things I'm not a fan of NFPA, but one thing NFPA does is they give you staffing requirements under 1710. And the reason why 1710 is there is to break up the job requirements. So
For that reason,
so you don't have to have a guy on a nozzle by himself conducting searches, or even the backup guy on a hose line conducting searches. 1710 says the standard is 17 people on scene within 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have 17 people on scene in 8 minutes, not all 17 got to be on a hose line. That's why
But
that's
a lot of
there.
them want to be.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
Biggest thing with searching, I think, is obviously training is paramount in searching. Masking up quickly and getting in there is top priority. Knowing how to use your senses, knowing how to use the tools that you carry is only going to help you searching, but you can't rely on your tools. Flashlight batteries die, tick batteries die. Hopefully you know how to know what you're looking at in that display that the tick's putting out. Use it, when to use a tool, when not to use a tool. Make sure if you are doing a VAS style tactic, don't get in, like you said, that door has become our mechanical safety device to make sure we're not going in too deep. The biggest thing is, searching is only going to help the fireground operations. It's going to get the hose line in quicker. It's going to save lives. It's going to save the structure. Water wins. And if we can get the water on the fire faster, that's going to be a win for everybody. And searching for that fire without a hose line is the quickest way to do that.
Takes discipline to train, discipline to stick to your tactics when you are in there. The VAS situation is tough for a lot of people. I've seen it happen on firegrounds where we kind of cheat that. You get in VAS, and then it's like, oh, well, since we're up here, we might as well just continue on to another search.
Yeah.
Stick to that discipline.
Yep.
100%.
So I don't think we've gotten any questions in the Gmail, but might as well give it out again, right?
Yeah. So the Gmail account, I actually have to check it, to be completely honest. I was out of town for a little bit. The email is firefrom2windows@gmail.com, and it's 2 spelled out, TWO.
Yep. And if you want to find us on Instagram, we post some stuff. We try to get some stuff up there, if not daily, every other day, every 3 days. Try to get some stuff up there relative to the podcast or just whatever's on our mind. That's Fire from Two Windows, all spelled out in letters, no numbers. We're up there. There's some other good Instagram handles you can check out. There's Search Culture, Boogie Down Truck, Truck Tactics. They're all out there. Everybody knows where they are. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Or listen. We're not going to see you, but you'll hear us next time.
You'll hear us next time. All right. Be safe.